Welcome to episode 6 of the CP Performance Podcast. Today's guest is Anne Meiwald. She used to play at Arsenal Academy. She was at Chelsea, also London Bees and Tottenham Ladies. In today's episode, she discusses coaching approaches, the use of technology and video clips, balancing sport, academia and work, also overcoming injuries as well. So it's quite a common theme in this series. But before we get started, just a quick message from our sponsor. Player is a new smart football tracker designed to utilise GPS technology and give you personalised sports science advice. For more information, go to playersmartcoach.com. And to be in for a chance to win one of the Player Smart Football Trackers, join our mailing list and follow us on social media at CP Perform UK. Welcome to this episode of the CP Performance Podcast. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Anne Meiwald. And can you give yourself a brief introduction for the listener?
Hello, everyone. I know Joe through Chelsea, and I was there for a couple of seasons a few years ago. But I'm currently playing with a championship team. Yeah, and he's invited me in today to have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, so the whole podcast really is about trying to understand the players' perspectives and the players' side of what coaching and S&C has done for them. So whether it's technical coaching or S&C coaches, what has helped you develop through your career. So for me, I wanted to just find out what approaches have you found, being at a variety of different clubs, what approaches have you found that have worked really well for you, and what have, not worked as well, something that's you found has actually got in the way of your development?
Yeah, so I've been in a couple of different clubs. I've had 2 serious ACL injuries over the past 3 years. So I've had a lot of experience with long-term serious injuries. And I've definitely had the best you can get, the best rehab you can get, and probably what I think the worst rehab you can get. I think SSC-wise, I liked to have someone around who would tell me what to do. I like having a plan, and I like having things to check off on that plan. So if they give me a week's worth of things to do, I'm very good at saying, right, I'm going to do it. Whereas if they give me a lot more freedom, I'm more likely to just be like, okay, I won't do it today.
No, that's fair enough. That's something I think when me, you and Aaron worked together, I think you did rather well. We put process in place for your rehab and just had everything laid out every day for you for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then you were cracked on and actually become a bit of a machine towards the end. So on the pitch then, how do you prefer to be coached when you're on the grass, when you're playing your game?
I like coaches to let me make the decisions first. So I want to make the decisions on my own, the right ones. So we have a lot of coaches who are very prescriptive in the way you want to play and where you should pass the ball first. And I don't always think that suits me, because sometimes you see things as a player that you don't necessarily see as a coach. So I think if you let players play, and then if you think that wasn't the right decision, then pull us back and then restart it. I always found that was a really good way of learning when and where I hadn't made the right decision. I also really appreciate, especially this season is the first season where I've had a lot of clips of me playing. I like watching them back and seeing, oh, hang on, this is a pass where I didn't see, I should have played it there, or I had more time than I thought, or my positioning wasn't quite right. And that kind of feedback also really helps.
Okay, that's really interesting. So your first real exposure to video analysis, in essence, was this year. So
yeah.
If you'd had that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, do you think it would have made you a different player now?
Yeah, for sure. I think I know some people don't like video analysis. They don't like looking back at them. They feel like they remember games really well and can analyze themselves afterwards straight away. But I found especially as a young player, I think there's so much to learn and to improve on that. Just seeing yourself, sometimes it just makes things clearer, and you can see all the players on the pitch. You can rewind, you can slow it down, and I think that would really have helped me And I think it's something that's coming into the game a lot more now. Like a few years ago, like that, it just didn't exist basically. So I'm glad I'm getting it now, but I could have definitely done with it a few years earlier.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Like personally, myself, whenever I've competed in any sport, I'm always engrossed and lost in a moment. So I can't remember anything that gets done until after I'm shown it. I never had a clue what was
Yeah,
going on until it was done. You know what I mean? That sounds crazy, doesn't
yeah,
it? But
yeah. Well, I'm the same. Like people can remember games from last year, and I'll be like, I played in that game, but like I couldn't tell you the score. I don't know who scored. Like I, I just don't remember these things. So to have those kind of things, and then clips you can look at, like really, really do help.
that's quite interesting. So, just on that as well, then, do you find analysing opposition changes the way you look at approaching a game?
Yes, I think especially if you're playing opposition who are quite a bit better than you, you have to look at who their strengths are and how we can combat that. But I think the trap is not to fall in too much about what the other team are doing, and like obviously know their strengths and weaknesses, but you then need to find a way about how your strengths will be able to combat that. So you still need to look at our team first. I think it's really easy to get caught up in, oh, you have to make sure we don't let them do this, or we have to make sure they don't. And I think that sets a really negative mindset sometimes from the outset, that we're going to be so under the cosh that we can't do anything ourselves. But I think it is good just to have a bit of an idea of like how the opposition like to play, and you can set traps and stuff like that. And I think that has also helped the game. But on the opposite side, the teams will know how we play, so it's all swings and roundabouts really. End of the day, you just got to get on the pitch and best team will win.
Yeah. I suppose that's the way to look at it. Football is a game where you can't predict anything. Anything could happen. You only have to look at certain scores for Chelsea this season to know that.
Yeah.
But this it's quite interesting. We went a little bit off piste. We went to talk about the analysis side of things, but I think that's brilliant because it shows the development that you've come through. Over the last few years, being involved in several different clubs, being involved obviously with the Chelsea team as well, with one of your injuries, and then only recently, even though there was the analysis at the first team level, only recently have you been exposed to it. So that's great. That shows quite an interesting challenge to what you've had to come across in your development. Obviously, not previously been exposed to it, you had to develop without that. Is there anything else other than that and your ACLs? Anything that you found logistically or socially or anything like that that has got in the way of potentially of your development in football?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've always had to balance education alongside football. So even when I was at Chelsea, I was training full time with the first team as a youngster, but I was doing my bachelor's degree in biology alongside of it. So and then also I was working part time because I mean, the money in women's football at the time then and still now in certain clubs isn't enough to live off. So I would literally, and I'm sure some of the girls can testify this, I'd be working from 5:30 in the morning till 10, turn up for training at 10:30 till whenever 3, then drive back home to Surrey, catch up on all the lectures I'd missed that day, do my assignments. So I was just constantly running from one thing to another, and I don't think I've ever had the chance to 100% commit myself fully to football. And I think that's a chance that girls now younger are, well, they have something to aspire to be able to do that, and will be able to have that chance. And like even now, I'm at uni 9 till 5, and then I go straight to training from there until 10 o'clock. Get home at 11, and it's exactly the same the next day. And a lot of other Championship footballers are in the same boat as me. Like we can't give 100% to football because we have other things in our life, and it just means that although you'd love to do the extra fitness or the extra SSC or the extra yoga or stretching to make yourself be the best footballer you can, or the extra technical work after training, you physically don't have the time, or you have to make time in a very, very packed day already. So then it's again sleep, food, like something's got to give.
Yeah, I don't think sleep and food should ever give for training. I think their sleep, hydration, and good quality nutrition should always be your pillars of everything you do because they'll get you through your education and your training as well. But yeah, that's a very, very interesting and insightful story there because a lot of people, a lot of young girls, like you say, developing now, will have the opportunity to not have to do that. However, would you, if you had the opportunity to go as a full-time pro, would you still go? Would you go as a full-time pro younger and not do a degree, or would you still do your degree?
The family I came from, I would definitely have done a degree still. I think it's not like the men's football where you could live off the money you make for the rest of your life afterwards if you're clever with it. I think you still have to have a career afterwards, so you always have to think about what happens after you're done. So I think I definitely would have done a degree. Also, for me, I like learning new things. Like I'm a bit of a geek like that. I like learning new things, and I think even when I was at Chelsea and I was training full time over the summer, like I always did other things, extra things outside of that, just to keep your mind engaged in other things other than football. I think it's really, really important to have those other things that make a part of your identity, and it's not just all about football, because when you lose it, when you're injured for 2 years or 9 months or however long it takes to get back, you've got other things to concentrate on you. And for me personally, when I was injured, uni was a massive thing. Like I had people outside of football I could rely on and support on. Like they couldn't care less about football, so it just made me not put that much pressure on myself to get back right now and take the time that I need to get my knee better. And also mentally, like it just meant I had something else to pull my attention away and not always be thinking about, oh, like I'm still injured, the girls are playing, like I can't come play, like I'm still 6-7 months off that stage. So I'm definitely the kind of person who would have carried on, but I know a lot of other people probably wouldn't or don't. I just think it's so important for afterwards that you have something to fall back on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that's an extremely mature mindset to have, and I think, like you say, the women's game hasn't quite blown up enough yet to retire in your 30s and not have to work for the second phase of your life or have a second career. So, I think I would always say to anyone trying to get into it at the moment, try and do your best to get educated at the same time. Some people, obviously, like you say, it's not
But
for.
I mean, it's not even just, it doesn't have to be uni or A levels or whatever. Like, it can be anything else. I think as long as you're improving yourself and you're learning things, whatever that is, whether it's you're doing extra media work if you want to go into the media, or you go and do an apprenticeship, or whatever it is, I think, but it is good to have that other side to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I wasn't saying you have to go to university. No, I completely agree. I think a vocational qualification is just as good if you're passionate about it. If you want to retire and become a chippy and you enjoy carpentry work, then why not? There's some incredible craftsmen out there and women out there as well. So if that's what you're passionate about, then put as much effort into that as you did into football, and you'll be the best craftsman or craftswoman in the world. It's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like that's really interesting, really cool perspective to have. What I do know again is that even those that are currently earning full time over at Chelsea, there's 4 or 5 of them that are still doing degrees part time. Because they've actually sat down and thought about that. So I think if there's any younger footballers or any coaches out there listening to this, I think if you've got a developing athlete who's picking between education and football, obviously it has to be their choice. But me personally, I'd always say to them they have to think about education, which is probably counterintuitive for what a coach should say. But it's actually about the personal development of of them. If you can help develop them, then you're doing your job right as a coach. And it's really interesting to hear your perspective on that as well, Anne, and how that played an important role in what you did, especially in your rehab. So you spoke about obviously having those significant injuries and overcoming those challenges using friends and education and things like that. And you alluded to as well coaching styles that actually you preferred. What I found quite interesting was we then went into the analysis side of it. With regards to that, do you like to actually sit down and have the freedom to go through your games and pick your clips and have a look, or do you like to just be directed to it and told? Because again, that's another form of coaching right there.
I've not really had much choice but to just be told which clips I get, just because purely I don't think I actually have the time to sit there and watch a whole game. Like, it sounds so bad, but sit there and watch a whole game and and pick out which clips I want. I think what we have done is like, if you think you want to have a look at, I don't know, if you're a striker and you want to say, I want to have a look at the shots that I took, this, like all shots that I took in this game, and see how many I made, where I was shooting, whether I make the right decision. We have the freedom to choose that. So if you want to look at something specific, but I think for me, in the regards that this is the first time I've ever even had the analysis, just to see anything for me, whatever the coaches felt important for me to see, I was fully on board with that's fine, that's good enough.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's getting yourself into it and understanding it a little bit first, isn't it? Learning it and then developing the freedom over time.
Exactly. Like a lot of the England girls they've had access to that, the younger ones, through England. So they're kind of more used to it and they kind of know what to expect and stuff. Whereas, like for me and some of the others, this is the fact that for me, as I've already said, first time I've ever been able to look at myself.
That's cool. That's a good insight as well. What's quite nice about that is that in this last sort of 15 or so minutes, we've covered 3 different topics in and around what it is to be an elite footballer, whether it's the S&C, whether it's the on pitch, and whether it's the analysis. And essentially, you've got 3 different coaching approaches there for each one. So that's quite nice to see how, as a player, you're not just sort of categorized into one area. Like when people think about coaching and developing as a coach, they go, oh yeah, well, people like to be coached like this, or people like to be coached like that. The people like to be guided, or people like to be told. And actually what it sounds like is people have different approaches to how they want to be coached depending on the context of the situation. You like process and guidance through S&C, but you like freedom and the chance to express yourself when you're on the pitch. The approach actually is a bit more relaxed. Coming away from the actual coaching styles and approaches that you've alluded to and you like, have you managed to, over your career, work out what does and what doesn't work for you with regards to the gym-based S&C stuff? So, for instance, are you a player that likes to make sure that 2 days before a game you've done an upper body session, or the day before a game you've done a little bit of lower body power primer or things like that? Have you got any things that specifically work for you?
I mean, what I love is our ThoroBands. It helps me more mentally, obviously physically as well, but mentally as well. Like just to feel like before training and before matches that I'm doing like 20 minutes of just activation of glutes, hamstrings, quads. I know it's coming in pretty much everywhere now, but like I was still doing it before when I was playing for uni and stuff. And I just think it just made me feel like I was going to be ready for the game. Like I was warm and I was ready to go, and my knee was, and well, both knees now are switched on. In regards to like gym stuff, I don't necessarily have like a specific routine that I do. We, over the season at Tottenham, we don't really like lift heavy weights. David's going to kill me because I don't know the name of them, but we use like these really funny,
The flywheels.
yeah, you know when you push up and then they pull them back down.
Yeah, the eccentric stuff.
Yeah. So we do a lot of stuff like that, and on the Versa pulleys, and which I actually really enjoy. It's something again really new for me this season, but I feel like they work me hard enough that I feel like I'm doing something, but it's not just the same heavy lifting that I've been doing for the past like 5 years. So I think for me, just as long as I feel like I get 2 good lower body gym sessions in a week, I think I feel ready for anything really. I do like a heavy gym session, especially in like the off season and stuff, like when you can't walk for like 2 days afterwards and feel like you've actually done something. But through the season, like you don't want to be lifting that much heavy stuff because you're not going to be able to run, you're not going to be able to perform at training and then perform at games. So I think that's important to make sure you've got those timings right.
Yeah, it's quite important in my opinion. Like you say, the timings of sessions. The session content can be almost anything you want it if you're used to it, because we've got different players that will have different approaches. Some like, this is the logistics of S&C here. Some like to do real heavy stuff sort of 3-4 days before a game and then something really light the day before, whereas others will only do light lower body work. There's only ever sort of the injury prevention side of things, but are quite happy to do the upper body stuff more often. But again, I think that's about spending time with them and learning their approaches to things. Over the 4 years of working at Chelsea, my approach to S&C had to develop and change with every single player that come in. Obviously, worked with the Scandinavians quite a lot the last 2 years, and my goal was to educate them that you don't have to lift heavy every single session, because they would come into every session and try and pick up like 100 kilos every time, and you're like, bloody, like it's nice to be able to do that, but it's not what you're here to do. You're here to play football,
Yeah.
and everything we do in the gym or outside of it, any of the speed work on the grass, any of the resisted speed work, any of the mechanics outside, it's kind of thing. That's all a complementary work to your
Yeah.
football. So we shouldn't be trying to exhaust people and take over as S&C coaches. We should be doing everything we can to keep them on the grass. Again, I think having spoke to you previously about different bits and pieces, I think you've like you said, you've been at lots of different clubs. You said you was at university as well playing. Can you just give us a bit of an overview of how your career and your path has looked as a footballer? What was you doing where, and how did it lead you to the next place?
Yeah, sure. So, well, when I was younger, I actually was a swimmer, and I didn't really take football seriously until I was 16, and I actually made it into it was called the Arsenal Academy then, and I played with the Arsenal under-17s and the reserves, so the Arsenal youth, for 2 years until I was 18, and we did college at the same time. So I was doing my A-levels in and around that, moved down to St Albans, so away from mum and dad, which was massive change for me. And then once the 2 years were done, I started looking at university spaces, and I always knew I would wanted to do something away from sport. A lot of people are surprised that I didn't do the sports science or sports coach or anything like that. But I just really enjoyed my science. So I did biology and looked around at various universities that were kind of near various clubs. So I was just trying to mix and match like unis to nearby clubs that could potentially work for me. So I went to the University of Surrey, got in there, and then I trialled at the Chelsea reserves and got in there. And that's where I then spent the next 4 years at uni and at Chelsea. Worked my way up from the reserves to first team, which was at the time, obviously, like for me, I improved massively, like training against players like Frank Kirby, Eni Luco, or training alongside like Gilly Flaherty. Like, you just pick up things and you learn so much. So they were very, very important years for me in my development. But unfortunately, I then, obviously with the improved professionalism and stuff of Chelsea, wasn't getting as much game time. And then on top of that, the first ACL injury happened. So, I mean, at that time, it was devastating. I don't think anyone really appreciates an ACL injury until you've gone through it yourself. It's hard and whatever, but until you've had to live through those moments, and sit there on the sidelines, nobody really understands it unless you've done it. So, and then after I came back from that, it was just about getting game. I just wanted to play. So I came back, played for uni, got ready for the season again, moved to London Bees, where I played a part of the spring series at the time. But unfortunately, 6 games in, did the second ACL, and I mean, that was the biggest mental blow I think I've had in my whole life, because I knew what was coming this time. I knew how hard it was, and I know I didn't have the same support network that I had at Chelsea, so I knew it was going to be twice as hard from the outset. But worked my way back. Took me a lot longer, but made my way back, and luckily had Tottenham pick me up at the start of the season. They helped me back through the last part of the rehab, and I've been trained the whole season, played a couple of games, so I feel like I'm back ready now to really attack the next season.
Good. That's a nice explanation of everything you've done. Like, that's an incredible pathway as well, to go from obviously to Arsenal to Chelsea to Bees and then back up to Tottenham as well. That's an incredible little journey. One question that's just come into my head: when you did your ACL, was there any particular series of events or anything around that? Like, was you in a period of exams, or was there any sort of external life stresses that were actually quite high, so increasing your stress levels, in and around the time you did your ACL, or was it a solely isolated incident?
I mean, I haven't actually really thought about this, but I think the first one was in end of February, so That would have been just after exams. So I think I had exams mid-January, end of January, and then I did it literally the 1st of Feb or something like that. So it would have been I was probably just feeling like a big relief that I'd got through the exams. The second one was actually, yeah, that was stressful because I did that a week before my dissertation was due. So yeah, it was my third year dissertation. We'd travelled up to Durham on the weekend, and like I was already thinking about, I've got to. I mean, I'd done most of it by then already, but like you're still the last little bits and pieces. It's been quite a hard couple of months because of it, and yeah, so that wasn't the greatest week for me, really.
No, that sounds tough, but it's quite interesting because obviously, like I said earlier, I would encourage an athlete to educate themselves, get into education, but you've just pointed out one of the negative things of it, and there's actually quite a chunk of research in America that shows injury spikes in and around high levels of academic stress, so end of semester exams, things like that, and it seems almost exactly the situation that occurred for you. So it's just an interesting observation, really, and something that I think people should be wary of. If you are going into any high stressful periods in academia or in work or whatever it is, then something needs to change. Whether that's your training, whether that's your game minutes, whether that's added recovery or whatever, something needs to change. So
Yeah,
that's fantastic. It's not fantastic for you, but it's fantastic to hear because it's living proof that there is the research out there and it is backed up by situations like
yeah.
this.
I mean, it just really doesn't surprise me. Like when I'm done with exams, or like if I finish a big assignment, like I've had it this year where I've had two modules during like assignments during the same week, but we've had a big game against, I don't know, Charlton or whoever it was at the weekend, where I felt like I couldn't miss training if I wanted to be part of it. And the week after that, like I'm ill because my body's just gone, whew, okay, that was a bit hard. Like, we're done now for a bit of a week. You need to chill out. And I think I've definitely struggled to balance that properly sometimes. I think it's definitely something I need to improve on.
Yeah, I think getting that work-life balance, especially if you're adding in studies and trying to add in a little bit of a social life as well, then it always becomes
Yeah,
a massive challenge. Me, I like to keep myself very busy, and I think I've pushed myself to the point of burning this year because obviously I was working, baby, doing my masters and traveling around the M25. So pushed myself to the point where I'm like, no, something's got to give. I I gave up completely on all my training to just focus on everything else because there just wasn't enough hours in the day, like you say. So not ideal for me, but it's better for family and that. So, and on that last thing, before I let you go eat up any more of your day, so we've covered quite a lot. We've covered loads actually. We've covered every possible area we could with you. Is there any other like little bits of advice you would give to a young athlete or a female athlete that is trying to push to get into the pro game from the amateur game? May not be young, but she's just on the verge. Any last little snippets of advice?
I would just say you've got to work hard all the time. Like, you can't take anything for granted. Like, you are going to get there on your own merit. So, and there's always something to improve on. Like, I talk to your coaches. Like, this is the biggest thing for me is like feedback. Like, I don't think I spoke enough to my coaches when I was younger. Kind of expected them to make the first move if they thought something needed to improve. And I think it's so important to get feedback on how you're doing and what you can improve on. And those little percentages, if you make those changes that they suggest, that could make or break, be the difference of you getting into the first team or not. So take it and take your prehab seriously. Injury prevention, like, that is the biggest thing I've learned. So make sure you do that, and
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll get through to it.
that's always the hardest sell with a young athlete. Make sure you're doing your injury prevention really well.
I can't tell you how important it is. I've unfortunately had to learn the hard way. So don't do what I did. Do it from the
Yeah,
start.
yeah. So on that, thank you ever so much for your time. Thanks for imparting us with some wisdom and experiences. And it's fantastic to have you on. And maybe if this podcast is still going in a year or so, I'll get you back on and see how things have changed and developed for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
So just want to thank you again for listening to the episode. Subscribe, follow us on social media at CP Perform UK, and again sign up to our mailing list if you want to win one of the Player Smart Football Trackers. Thank you.